Well, welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson. Always a delight having the house. John Mittendorf. John works with Answers in Genesis and does a lot of research. And today we're going to start a two-part series that I think you're going to find to be absolutely fascinating.
Well, it might be more than two parts. I'm not sure. We're going to start with two parts.
Yeah, he's like the pastor that says, I'm going to have a two-part sermon series, and then 2 years later, he's finishing the book of Acts.
Right.
Anyway, we want to talk about Israel. It's in the news a lot, and there's a lot going on. And why were you compelled to take this on?
You know, Perry, it's almost dominating the news. Other than the shooting in Missouri about a week or two ago, if you take that aside, really the rest of the news is just based on Hamas, the Gaza Strip, Israel. And this is nothing new to Israel because they've been doing this ever since 1948, actually back since Abraham in reality. And so I thought, one of the things that impressed me is when I watch the news, you see all these terms coming out: caliphate, ISIS, ISIL, Islamic State, and the list just keeps going on, but nobody really ever defines them. And I start thinking, well, what's the difference between ISIS, ISIL, and Islamic State?
Yeah.
Because you see them all. And we're going to talk about that. And I thought, you know, it'd be a great study to kind of figure out and to kind of clarify a lot of things that are going on, a lot of terminologies they're using. Plus, you and I, a year or two ago, did some end-time prophecies, Ezekiel 38 and 39, which kind of fits right in there. In fact, we might just review that again a little bit because things have changed so much. Yeah. But you know, when you stop and think about it, if you go back, well, more than a couple years ago, but not that far ago, back to Yasser Arafat, the PLO, Palestine Liberation Organization, that doesn't seem that long ago. And really, they were kind of this group that was just kind of causing trouble, and everybody kind of thought, yeah, you know, here's PLO and here's Yasser over here. Don't bother us. Just go away. Well, now it's don't go away. I mean, they're here and they're in your face. And so I brought in a couple of examples. This is USA Today. And the title piece.
How dangerous is the Islamic State?
How dangerous is the Islamic State? Yeah, here's another one. This is right out of the Mail Tribune. In fact, this is Sunday, if you want to hold that up. Fighting the Islamic State. This comes out of the Mail Tribune also. Iraqi military clashes with militants in Tikrit. And so I think what was, and the list goes on and on and on. I think what was a real wake-up call to the international community, particularly the United States, is that and I'm going to use the term right now, Islamic State, to cover ISIL and ISIS. We'll get to that in just a minute. In reality, there's not much difference between all three of them. You can use the terms interchangeably, and I think still be accurate. And that's why you hear that so interchangeably in the media. But recently, a wake-up call was when the Islamic State took over Mosul and then the Mosul Dam. And before that, people thought, well, you know, yeah, they're just this organization over there, and yeah, they're just causing problems. Well, they're causing a lot more than problems. Currently, the Islamic State is controlling the upper third of Iraq and Syria. I want you to think about that for a second. And what's interesting is I did some study. What the real problem that has challenged Assad, who's the president, the chairman of Syria, is Syria has a very large military organization. They have about 500,000 troops. They have about 3,700 tanks, and they have about 510 aircraft. And what happened was the Islamic State came into Syria and they started creating problems, and Assad, and this seems to be the general consensus, Assad thought, well, I don't need to have two fights on the front. In other words, my problems and their problems, so I'm just going to let them go. They're just this little faction group over there, and I'll see if I can take care of my problems. Well, that didn't turn out to be the case, because now the Islamic State is a large, well-funded, well-organized, powerful organization. As I said, they control the upper third of Syria and Iraq, and now Assad has his hands full. But beyond that, Perry, stop and think about for a minute. If the Islamic State were to take over and capture Syria, they would have access to their full military machine. And now what happens is you now have an organization that is well funded. In fact, when the Islamic State took over Mosul, they overtook over the central bank of Iraq. They have money.
Wow.
They have a lot of money. And so now that they have, if they were to do that, if they were to take over and access Syria's military machine, Israel would have a more serious problem than the problems they have today. And so as I stopped and I thought about that, I thought, well, you know, the United States also has a large problem too, because we're not as in the wings as much as we thought we were. You know, we thought that, yeah, we're isolated from all the Middle East and all the problems that happened over there. And then along came 9/11. Mm-hmm. And then we thought, well, wait a minute, maybe we're a lot more vulnerable than we thought. But the major problem is, as you know, and I think everybody that's watching knows, is our southern border is wide open. Wide open. Yeah. And they're now saying that you can take the bomb that fell on Nagasaki and Hiroshima and put a bomb that significantly has more capability, and I just don't remember the figures, 10 times worse, 20 times worse, whatever it is, a lot worse, and put it into a suitcase. When you take those capabilities and talk about an Islamist terrorist coming across our southern border into the United States, which they've been doing, that is nothing new. You have to stop and think about it. Wait a minute. The problem that we see in the Middle East isn't as isolated as we thought that it was. That it could be just as...
Well, they've openly said that Israel is Satan and America is the great Satan.
Is the great Satan, correct.
And so we know what their agenda is. You say it's well funded up until taking over the bank of Iraq. Who funded them?
Well, there's various sources. You have a lot of, it's fascinating. We're going to get to this. We're kind of getting ahead of ourselves here a little bit, but that's okay. You have a lot of militants that are coming in from around the world, including Americans, that have American passports that are going over to fight with them and taking a lot of their resources. That's one. They're also selling antiquities from the Middle East, which is big money in the international market. They took over the bank, as I just mentioned. That's another fund. They're also getting money from, no surprise, us, Syria, Iran. In fact, when we finally get to the rockets that they're using, Hamas is using out of the Gaza Strip, which are being given to them by China and Iran. Well, is China giving them money? You know, I don't know. But they have money coming in from a lot of different sources because I think you can see a lot of countries that are saying, you know, it's about time that somebody's finally stepping up the plate that is willing to do something from an organized perspective. Let's help them out.
Okay. Again, I want to say to our viewers and our listeners, this series that we're on with Israel, John has put together some incredible notes, some very detailed, and I might add, colored pictures. And
to go along with the new facility.
There we go. We will make this available to you, 2 places. You can come by here, or the best way to get it is to go to John's, just email John at hispeoplerejoice.com.
At gmail.com.
At gmail.com.
Right.
Hispeoplerejoice at gmail.com. And he'll send you a complete set of these notes, and they are very well put together and very comprehensive. All right, get us going here before we take a break.
Yeah, all graphics that we're going to be using in these programs, Perry, are in the notes also in color. So let me start off with the first one, and I just want to start off with just a couple of basic principles before we take our break, and I'm sure most people have seen this before. This is a map basically of the Middle East, and when you look at this and you look at the countries that surround Israel, you know, you have Libya, you have Egypt, you have Saudi Arabia, Iran, Turkey. We're talking about a lot of large areas that are all Islamic, by the way. And when you look at the map, you say, well, where's Israel? Well,
a little slice right there.
That's a good point. Here's a close-up right here. And here's Israel right here. Israel is about the size of one of our little New England states, Rhode Island to be exact, which is not really that big. And so when you look at the amount of Islamic states and the size of the states that are around Israel, you wonder how Israel has existed since 1948. Well, it's a providence of God in reality, yeah. Because they weren't a state more than one day when the Arab nations attacked them. Of course, that was the war of 48-49. Of course, they won, and you know, it's been that way ever since. But I think one of the disappointing things to me, Perry, is this right here. That when you look at the media and you asked how we ever got into Israel to begin with, I think this caricature, I think, overviews it very, very well, in that the caricature on the left, you know, Hamas launches rockets against Israel, which they've been doing since 2001. Since 2001, they've launched approximately 15,000 rockets into Israel. Have you ever really heard anything about that?
15,000.
Yeah, 15,000. 15,000. 10,000 since 2005. Have you heard anything about that? No. Is there an international community uproar over that?
No.
No. Does the UN really care about that?
No.
No. But then, when Israel starts to protect itself, starting with this year, because you can only take so much, what do you see on the news today?
Yeah.
Well, Israel just,
is killing women and children.
Is killing women and children in Palestine, and of course the list goes on. So Israel, to a large degree, is the bad guys, and of course Hamas are the good guys in the international media.
Well, we want to get into this. We're going to take a quick break, and in fact, we are into it. And again, let you know that if you'd like a copy of these notes, we'll make them available to you. The best way to do it is to email John at hispeoplerejoice@gmail.com, hispeoplerejoice@gmail.com. When we come back, we got a lot to talk about, and we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Paulina, and I work at theDove TV. Did you know that when you support theDove TV, you have a profound impact, not only in our community, but around the world? It's your continued support that takes the inspiration and hope in the programs we produce and makes them available to the thousands of people who are watching these videos online every week. Help bring encouragement and hope to our valley and beyond by making a secure online donation today at our website, thedove.us.
Okay, we're back, and John Mittendorf with us today, and we're dealing with really a great subject, Israel. And I don't know if we can squeeze it into two series, probably not, 3 or 4. We could probably talk about it for a long time, but there's much going on concerning this little country. It's dominating the press and gets the attention of the world.
Boy.
It's smack dab in the middle of, if you can imagine, I don't even know how to describe it, but it's just this little spot on the globe surrounded by all of its enemies, and everybody has one thing in mind: they want it gone.
Gone.
And
off
then,
the map.
And when they're gone, they want us gone. So anyway, we're talking about it and some of the things that happened. I remember reading all of the things about 1948. That is, a lot of people will say the 1948 generation, which is also the baby boomers, our generation, is prophetic in its significance. Then you have the 1967 Six-Day War has issues. Now I guess they're actually asking the UN to go back and renegotiate the contract on the land that was given away. I mean, this thing is just crazy. If you can imagine all this in this little piece of real estate, everybody trying to get its piece of it.
And you know, it's God's providence that Israel is there. It actually was there in 1948 and is still there today, and actually a powerhouse in the Middle East. But as the Islamic State continues to gain land, continues to gain power, continues to gain money, and then I think we can say that the U.S. to a large degree has backed away from Israel compared to maybe 10, 20, 30 years ago, that Israel is finding himself more and more isolated, and I think it's common sense that Iran wants to be nuclear and are working very, very hard to that end. And the day that Iran becomes nuclear, and that could be in 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 years, whatever, that Israel is going to have to make a huge decision. And if she can't count on the United States, she's going to have to go it alone, because she cannot allow Iran to go nuclear. And the day that Israel bombs Iran or takes Iran out and takes away their nuclear capability, I think it's safe to say that the Islamic countries around Israel are not going to be happy, are not going to be happy. And that could be, I mean, we're just saying could be, that could be the start of the Ezekiel 38-39 war, that when Russia takes the Islamic nations, who are all friends, and they march on Israel.
All right, let's deal with some definitions.
Let's do some definitions. And what I did, Perry, was I took a lot of the terminology that's out of the media that's commonly used, And I wanted just to find them this morning so I think people have a better idea of when they say something, exactly what are they saying. Let's start off with Palestinian. When you say Palestinian, exactly what do you mean? And basically that's descendants from people who have lived in Palestine, that are largely and culturally Arabic and Islamic. Of course, the question then rises, okay, what is Palestine? Because you hear that a lot. And let me bring up this next graphic, and I think this is going to help clarify all of that. For the people that are listening and not watching, imagine looking at a map and seeing to the left, let's just say west, the Mediterranean Sea and Egypt. The next thing you'll see if you go to the east is Israel, and then on the other side of Israel, to the east of Israel, would be the Dead Sea, Jordan, Syria, and Saudi Arabia, with Israel wedged in between all of that. Now, within Israel is something very, very interesting. Here you can see we have the Gaza Strip and we have the West Bank, both of which are classified today by the UN as Palestine. And what's interesting is both the Gaza Strip and the West Bank are located where?
In Israel.
Within the contiguous boundaries of Israel. Now, when you look at the map, you can see why it's so easy for Hamas in Gaza, or Fatah, who is the political, runs the West Bank politically. You can see why it's so easy for them to be a thorn in the side of Israel, because they're in Israel. So if I'm going to lob rockets in Israel from Gaza Strip, where the majority of them have come from, it's very easy. I only have to have a rocket that has a range of maybe 10, 20, 30 miles, not a problem. Yeah. Whereas if I'm going to launch from Egypt or Jordan or Syria or Saudi Arabia, it's a whole different ballgame. It's a whole different ballgame. But basically when we say Palestine, what we're referring to is the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, which are located within
inside
the boundaries of Israel. Is exactly right.
By the way, and all the two-state talk was primarily to actually recognize West Banks as a place for the Palestinians to call their own. Right. And what was the prime minister before last that actually offered West Bank? And they turned it down.
Yes, I don't remember.
Anyway, he offered the West Bank.
Yasser, good old Yasser says, no, I don't want that.
I don't want that. What do you want then? If you don't want that, he said, we want you guys in the ocean.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that's basically what
and
he
said.
Didn't
didn't stutter when he said it.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly right. So it's interesting in that the Palestinian Declaration of Independence, which was 1988, Palestine declared the state of Palestine, which is recognized by the UN, but it's not recognized by the United States and by Israel. And then I found something very interesting, Perry, and this is, I think, where a lot of this wishy-washy stuff comes from. Remember the Oslo Accords of 1993? In the Oslo Accords, they granted Palestine the right to self-determination, but they didn't grant them the right to their own state. And that's where a lot of the problems has come from. Palestine wants a state. The Palestinians want a home they can call their own, but they don't have it. And so right now what they're doing is they're being limited to the West Bank and to the Gaza Strip, which is in Israel. And Israel currently has a blockade around the Gaza Strip. They monitor everything that goes in and out of the Gaza Strip. You'll find it very, very interesting when we get to what they found when they discovered all the tunnels that the Palestinians had dug from the Gaza Strip into Israel. And the media has really softened that one. That one is fascinating.
Question, how does the Hamas and Palestinians get their supplies into the Gaza Strip then? I mean, where are all these missiles coming from?
Well, we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Are they coming out of Egypt? I mean, they can't. Yeah. It's obvious from the West Bank's getting them through the line at Jordan. But how are you getting them in from the Gaza Strip?
We're going to get into this when we get to the tunnels and a lot of what they've discovered. But just as a quickie, because I know a lot of people go, yeah, okay, so what's the answer to that question? Well, first of all, you have the legitimate supplies that are going into the Gaza Strip. And those have to go across the border, and of course they're checked by the Israelis. Do you have any rockets in your truck, in all those kinds of things. But once they went into the Gaza Strip, starting in June, They discovered all the tunnel system. Of course, the majority of the tunnel system goes from the Gaza Strip into Israel, but they also discovered tunnels that go from the Gaza Strip to Egypt. That's how they're getting a lot of the missile stuff into the Gaza Strip. Also, in the Gaza Strip, a lot of the missiles that the majority of the missiles that they're using are called Qassams. And the Qassams are basically made out of common items. They only have a range of maybe up to about 11 miles. But they can make them by the thousands, they can fire them by the thousands, and basically the warheads might be 4, 5, or 6 pounds of TNT. The propellants are made out of sugar and fertilizer, common stuff. But one thing that the Israelis discovered, that a lot of concrete that had been going into the Gaza Strip for construction purposes were being used for construction of the tunnels. And so things have dramatically changed since June of this year.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, Palestine Liberation Organization, you know, that's kind of old stuff. You know, that was Chairman Yasser Arafat. Today they're recognized as the Palestinian National Authority, which is really kind of yesterday's news. They're not really a player in today's field. A term that you hear the media used a lot is caliphate. And I found it very interesting that the definition of caliphate means successor. And the Islamic definition of caliphate goes something like this. It's an Islamic state that is supposed to encompass every Muslim on earth, which has never really existed. And the jihadist vision of caliphate as the height of Islam's glory. And what they want to do, looking at the map that we have on the screen here, as we just mentioned, we have Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Israel, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon. The jihadists today view a modern caliphate as comprised of Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, Egypt, and Israel without Israel.
Okay.
In other words, the land of Israel without the Israelis in it. That is their dream of a modern-day caliphate. Now, let's assume that they were able to do that. Let's assume that they were able to take this land and make it a caliphate that's basically all Islamic. What do you think Plan B would be? Oh, let's expand our boundaries and let's go after Big Satan, right? Yeah. So you can see where they're going. As I said today, right now, the Islamic State controls the top third of Syria and the top third of Iraq.
Okay.
So they're well on their way. Well on their way. Allah basically is the Arab designation for God, used by Muslims to refer to God in Islam. Muhammad, and I'm just going through these very quickly because I think a lot of people are somewhat familiar with these. Muhammad was considered by Muslims to be a messenger from God, and his revelations supposedly were from God. That's what's known as Islam, found in the Quran, and he supposedly was the last prophet of God. Muslim is an Abrahamic monotheistic religion voiced in the Quran. It's considered by its followers as the absolute Word of God. When we finish with this portion, Perry, and we get into the history of Israel, going back to Abraham, you're going to see that the Islamists view Abraham as their father also. But that's where the similarity stops. And it'll be fascinating. We go do a little study on that to see how they take Abraham and then they branch off, and how Christianity goes off this way, and then how the Islam religion goes off the other way. But there's a lot of similarities between the two. Wow. Okay? Jihad. By the way, Islam, or Muslims, today is the second largest growing religion in the world. It's made up of Shia, 10 to 20%, and Sunnis, which is 80 to 90%. So if Islam is the second fastest growing religion in the world, what's the first fastest growing? Christianity. See, you're right on top of this stuff.
You're right.
What can I say?
Yeah.
Now, jihad. And you hear this a lot.
Right.
Jihad is an Islamic term and a religious duty that means struggle or resisting. And there's two facets to it before we take a break. An inner spiritual struggle But what you're seeing today in the news is the physical struggle against the enemies of Islam that can be either non-violent or violent. And supporters of violent jihad view it as a form of a holy war.
Wow. All right. We'll be right back with John Mittendorf. And by the way, these notes are available. They are very comprehensive and beautifully done with colored pictures and the whole 9 yards. You can get a copy. It's our gift to you. Just go to hispeoplerejoice@gmail.com and John will send you a set. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Daniel and I work at theDove TV. You know, compared to Portland, Seattle, and LA, Medford might be considered a small market, but at theDove, we're excited about the opportunity to make a big impact right here in our community. And you help make that happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us now by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or by phoning 541-776-5368.
Okay, we're back, and we're doing a two-part series with John Mittendorf on Israel, and right now we're going through some basic definitions of terms that you probably have heard used a lot in the news on the various reportings. I mean, we've heard about Allah and Muhammad and
caliphate
and jihad and caliphate and all of these things. They all have definite meanings, and they all are part of the equation. We're trying to get you, give you the background on the meanings of those terms, and then as it relates to where we are with Israel today, as Israel now is completely surrounded by all of the countries that surround Israel, want Israel off the map. And which is so interesting because the UN is just worthless. I mean, you know, it's doing nothing.
And actually,
you know, it has done nothing.
I think we can say that the UN is pro-Hamas, is pro-Islamic.
All right, so can I sidetrack you just for a second?
Absolutely.
Isn't this?
But you might have to bring me back, though.
Okay, isn't this spiritual?
Yes.
I mean, we have lovers of God and haters of God.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's going on here.
Right.
And the Antichrist, if we can use that term, certainly has manifested itself.
Right.
In this other religion, and now it's those who want to support those who want to be a part of that belief system, and those who want to be a part of the Christian belief system, those who believe in the true God, and those who believe in what they call Allah. I mean, that's what we're dealing with. Because how could good citizens, both from say the UK and the United States, give up everything and go join these people to kill people? Their mission is to kill people.
and not only to kill people, Perry, but to brutally kill people. And I made the comment right before we started the program that when you look at the Islamic State and what they're doing is they're sweeping through Iraq and Syria, and well, the beheading of the journalist a couple weeks ago is a classic example. And then they put it on YouTube. See, here's what we're doing. And I think to a large degree it makes Hitler's Gestapo back in World War II look like sandbox people. That these guys, you know, at least Hitler's Gestapo would not have blown themselves up for a cause. These people will eagerly do that, including their family. So it's a whole different element, and I think of sin that you're looking at in the world, which kinda, I think, gives you a taste of the end times when the church is taking out of the world and Satan is allowed to run free reign.
All right, let's go on with some of these. I just want to throw that in there because I think I want people to realize at the end of all of these things that we're talking about, there's great spiritual significance. And this is what we're dealing with, because if you're not careful, you get wrapped up in the politics of it.
Oh boy, right.
This is totally spiritual, totally biblical.
All we have to do is to get a brand new president and all of our problems are going to go away. He's going to straighten everything out, right?
Yeah, right.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Probably not. So anyway, let's keep going.
Al-Qaeda.
Al-Qaeda, which is kind of yesterday's terrorist group, I think, compared to today. As you know, it was founded and funded by Osama bin Laden. Of course, he's gone. That was back in 88 and 89. Of course, this is 2014. But then during the Syrian civil war, Al-Qaeda factions started fighting each other. And out of that, Perry, you started to see other branches of militant organizations, ISIS, ISIL, Islamic State, Hamas, branch off from Al-Qaeda. So to a degree, Al-Qaeda is still there, but I think we can say that they're not really the presence that they used to be compared to the new groups that we're seeing in the news today.
Well, they've just taken up a new name, I guess, huh?
Or shifted chairs in the room.
Yeah.
Hamas.
Hamas.
Oh, this is a good one. And that's short for Islamic Resistance Movement. It's a Palestinian Sunni Islamic organization primarily located in Palestinian territories, which is Gaza Strip.
Yep.
Right? Okay. Founded in 1987 from the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood. Heard of that one before?
Yeah.
We could have done a whole program just on terrorist groups back in the Mideast, you know. I mean, it's just one after another after another after another. But the principal goal of all of them, Perry, is the liberation of Palestine and Israel from the land. That's their goal. Interestingly, as you know, Hamas defeated the PLO Fatah Party back in 2005, and Hamas now has political control of the Gaza Strip. And so, yeah. But I wanted to read just a few things out of the Hamas Charter, which was issued in 1988. And this is a quote. Our struggle against the Jews is very great and very serious and calls for the obliteration and/or dissolution of Israel with the eventual formation of Islamic State in Palestine. They want them gone. Number two, the time will not come until Muslims will fight the Jews and kill them, until the Jews hide behind rocks and trees, which will cry, "O Muslim, there is a Jew hiding behind me, come and kill him." That comes right out of the Quran, by the way. And number three, Hamas is a humanistic religion and tolerant of other religions as long as they do not block Hamas's efforts. So you either join us or you're against us, one or the other. One or the other. I think one of the things that that really disappointed me the most in the study, Perry, was former President Jimmy Carter. And back on August 5th of this year, this is what he said. He called on the West to recognize the U.S. designated terrorist group Hamas as a legitimate political actor. And he also said this: there is no humane or legal justification for the way Israeli defense forces are conducting this war. And he is a supporter of Hamas, not of Israel.
He calls himself a Christian.
And he calls himself a Christian, right. Right. Okay?
Yeah. It's just amazing. How would you explain then, John, the rivalry among themselves? Right now they seem to be fighting a civil war among fellow Muslims.
Right.
As to what of these factions are going to dominate. You know, whether it's Hamas, whether it's ISIS, ISIL, you know, the Brotherhood, I mean, all previous groups, current groups. But they seem to be struggling among themselves as who's going to be king of the mountain.
That is correct. And to a large degree, Perry, the Islamic State has become so radical, has become so powerful that, believe it or not, some of the other terrorist groups are disavowing the Islamic State. They said, okay, we all have this focus, but let's don't get the international community on our back, which the international community is starting to do. They're going, hey, wait a minute. The Islamic State is out of control, so what can we do this?
And that would be Egypt. I would assume Egypt's probably in that camp.
Egypt is one of them. Turkey is another one. There's a few in there that would surprise you. They're saying, hey, wait a minute. This is over the boundary, so to speak, if there is a boundary. If there is
Even
a boundary.
The Kurds.
Yeah, exactly right. So, but they also basically, Perry, are coming together, and it's called the Black Flag. If you've ever seen a picture of Islamic State, ISIS or ISIL, you'll see a bunch of the terrorists, and of course they've got the mask on. They don't want their face to be shown, but they will have behind them a black flag that just has a little Arabic symbol on it, and that is I think, the coming together of various terrorist groups into one, which is the Islamic State. So I think you're seeing a formation of some of the faction groups coming together under the black flag, which is called the black flag, which is not good. As long as you have, I think, various factions fighting each other, they don't have a common goal, then they tend to deviate a little bit. But once they all come together and now they have a common goal, then that can be a lot more dangerous.
Well, let's go through some of these.
Okay, let's do some more.
Yeah.
Fatah, founded in 1959, previously known as the Palestine National Liberation Movement. Heard that one before. 2005 or 6, Fatah lost to Hamas in the Palestinian elections and insists taking political control of the West Bank. So you have Hamas in Gaza and you have Fatah in the West Bank. And that's why it's that way.
And now, Hamas is more militant than Fatah, right? And Fatah was bad.
Fatah was Palestine Liberation Organization was bad.
Yeah.
Fatah's worse.
Hamas is worse.
Hamas is worse. Islamic State's worse yet.
ISIS is worse yet. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. Okay. Now let's get into 3 definitions that I think you're going to find is fascinating. ISIS, because you hear ISIS, ISIL, and Islamic State a lot interchangeably. ISIS is shorthand for the Islamic State of Iraq and Greater Syria. Okay, let's go back to our map. Here we go. Well, here's Syria. And for those that are not watching, you have Israel in the middle, and up to the far right, you have Syria. Now, down below that, you have Jordan. Of course, over to the left of Israel, you have Egypt, and right down below that, you have Saudi Arabia. By the way, Saudi Arabia is the center point of Islam. Mecca is in Saudi Arabia. So everything is right there, close and handy. Now, shorthand for the Islamic State of Iraq and Greater Syria, they're linked to Al-Qaeda in Iraq. And remember when the U.S. went into Iraq, Al-Qaeda was kind of pounded down somewhat. Okay. So after that, ISIS emerged as a fearsome and a well-funded group. Okay? Why don't we take a break, and then let's go into ISIL and the Islamic State and see if we can pull these 3 organizations together.
All right. By the way, if you'd like a copy of these very comprehensive notes, we make them available to you absolutely free. Just email John at hispeoplerejoice@gmail.com. hispeoplerejoice@gmail.com. And he'll email you back the file that has all the notes, including the colored pictures. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Paula, and I work at theDove TV. Every day we get letters and emails from people who've been encouraged, blessed, and challenged by the programs on theDove TV. But we couldn't do it without you. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to bring inspiration and hope to our community by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or call us at 541-776-5368.
Okay, we're back, and we're doing a 2-part series with John Mittendorf on Israel. Fascinating, to say the least, and I say 2 parts. We probably go 3 or 4 parts before this is all done.
Would you go 5?
Well, yeah, whatever it takes.
We'll see.
We're trying to lay a foundation down to give you a good idea of what's going on over there and what's it really all about, and how does it line up to Scripture. And I think when this is all done, we may have to do a little bit of a review on some of those shows that we've done in the past on Bible prophecy, where this may fit in right now.
It fits in.
It fits in very well.
It fits in very nicely.
All right, so let's get into, we've been dealing with a lot of definitions and very important ones from ISIS. Let's go to ISIL, because, you know, this one just popped up here within the last month or so.
Right.
In fact, the president referred to it.
Yes, but when you hear him tomorrow, he might say ISIS, and when you hear him next week, he might say Islamic State.
Yeah.
So, and basically all 3 of them in reality are just about the same. ISIS basically was a terrorist organization that came into Iraq after we pounded Iraq. And then they got a little bit of power, a little bit of strength, and then they went into Syria. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, Assad made a major mistake when he decided, I'm just going to let them do their thing and I'll do my thing. And then as he did his thing, they became a lot stronger. Now they control 1/3 of Syria. So now Assad has a major problem. He doesn't know what to do with it. Out of that group, Perry, then came ISIL. And ISIL stands for Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant. Now you might be thinking, what in the world does does Levant mean?
Yeah.
Let me take you back to our map. Levant comes from a term in the group's Arabic name, Al-Sham, that refers to a region stretching from, now look at the map, southern Turkey through Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, Israel, and the Palestinian territory. So to them, a Levant means if you can take above this map up in the Turkey and come down towards Egypt and all the land in between Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, West Bank, Israel, Gaza Strip, Egypt, and turn that into an Islamic state, that is a Levant.
So that means no Israel.
That means no Israel. So what that also means, Perry, is they now have a focus and a goal. We're just not going to go around and scoop up territory and behead people and kill people. Our goal now is to make an Islamic state a caliphate, which can also be called a Levant, and that's ISIL.
Wow.
Okay?
Okay.
Then we have the Islam. Are you confused yet?
No.
The Islamic State.
Actually, I get it. You know.
Yeah.
You know.
Okay, the Islamic State, formerly known as ISIL, in Iraq, and was formed out of that organization in April of 2013. So by now you're probably thinking, well, wait a minute, there are some differences. Not really. It's kind of they just keep changing their name. Okay. So if you want to say ISIS, ISIL, Islamic State, I can go with that.
Okay.
Due to frequently changing English titles, ISIS, ISIL, or Islamic State, the basic idea is that Islamic militants flying the black flag have a central focus of territorial conquest. Underscored by rape, crucifixion, mass ethnic murder, public beheading, and imposing extreme form of Sunni Islam. So I think probably the primary difference between, just for discussion purposes, between IS, the Islamic State, and all the previous organizations is we now have come together and we have a central focus. Let's take the map that we have on the screen, that Levant, or that caliphate, and let's make it Islamic. And by the way, while we're doing that, why don't we destroy Israel?
Okay.
And get them off the map?
Primarily up till now, you've been dealing with the Sunni side of Islam.
Right.
And you have the Shiite side.
Right.
Now, without getting into too much of those differences, theologically they're the same?
There's differences. And is the Christian religion basically the same? Yes. Are there some differences between the Baptists and the Lutherans and the Methodists and so on?
Got it.
Yes, yeah. Interestingly, in the Islamic religion, Sunnis make up the largest part, 80 to 90%. So the Shias are only 10 to 20%. So the majority rules. Right?
Okay.
The squeaking wheel gets the grease, so to speak. Yeah.
Okay.
So the Islamic State, IS, let's see, as we talked about, they're well funded. You have people from around the world joining their cause. And an interesting part about that is that if I have militants from Canada, from the United States, the West, Australia, United States, Britain, not really the West, but joining IS, they have passports to their country. That means they can go from here, they can go over there, they can fight, they can be trained, they can come back here. And when they come back here, they can bring people with them across the border. And you can see how it'd be easy for this country to be set up. Very easy. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel and General Dempsey, U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff, has warned that Islamic State militants pose the biggest threat to the United States today. Not China, not Russia, the Islamic State. That's quite a statement.
Yeah.
Just for a group of ragtag people driving around Nissan pickup trucks in the Middle East, right?
I can't believe that we are being intimidated by people that really don't have any kind of military warfare and equipment and resources like we do. And yet they're intimidating us.
Yeah, but they are. And you know, IS right now, as I've said several times, controls the upper third of Iraq and Syria. They also control the eastern oil fields in Syria currently. That's where some of their money is coming from. What happens if Iraq and Syria were to fall? and they were to take over the oil fields of those two countries. Basically, all you'd have left would be Saudi Arabia. Of course, that's the majority of the oil fields. But you're starting to see how oil can be a major player in the world politics, particularly in the Mideast. And as big as the United States is, as strong and as powerful as we are, we're the only superpower today. If you suddenly control the oil fields, we have a major problem.
Okay, let's see. We got about 4 minutes here.
Moving right along,
All
right?
right.
Let me just talk real quick about Operation Protective Edge, and then when we do our next program, we'll come back and we'll talk about that in more detail. That was started on July 8th, 2014 by the IDF, Israeli Defense Forces, and basically it focused on the Hamas-governed Gaza Strip. Let me go back and bring up our map again right here. And so as we talked about, here's Israel, and the Gaza Strip is this little section of land right here. Of course, you have the West Bank over here. But most of the rockets that have been going into Israel have been coming from the Gaza Strip right here. And of course, that's why Operation Protective Edge focused on Gaza. And it's interesting that their major focus, I think, came from 3 viewpoints. Another one, first, the rocket fire coming into Israel, which is 15,000 rockets since 2001. Then remember you had the abduction of the 3 Jewish students that were killed.
Right.
Okay. And then Israel had discovered a few tunnels from the Gaza Strip into Israel, which at the time they didn't really think it was as big a deal as it turned out to be. And of course, once they went into Gaza in their campaign, they discovered, and I've read various figures, but I've seen some figures that say Israel doesn't really know yet how many tunnels have been dug. Some of them, there's thousands of tunnels going from Gaza into Israel, some of which are big enough to handle tanks, command centers, and the list goes on. Basically, what was happening, we'll talk more about this in the next program. In fact, I'll bring up graphics of the rockets they've been using, the tunnels that they've been using, and the Israeli defense system, which is going after the rocket attacks. But we'll bring some of that stuff up. But what they discovered was that Gaza had been preparing, and the West Bank also, because they're both the same, had been preparing for an underground war against Israel that Israel was not aware of. And if they wouldn't have gone into Gaza in June, Gaza would have been set up for an underground war against Israel that probably would have been a major, major problem. In fact, just real quick, what do you think some of the major parts and instruments they found in the tunnels were?
Major parts?
Major things. Let me put it that way.
Well, probably a lot of arsenal.
That is correct. They found stockpiles, thousands of weapons, but they also found tranquilizers, handcuffs, syringes, and ropes that are tools used for capture. And they feel that what they were planning on doing was capturing Israeli people, abducting them back into Gaza, and using them for a ticket against Israel.
So the discovery of the tunnels themselves was somewhat divine intervention.
Could have been divine intervention, yeah.
Because
they were all there, they were all in place, ready to go. And of course, the news made a big deal out of it about how Israel was going in and blowing up these tunnels. Right. But the news media never really focused on the fact why the tunnels were there and what they found in the tunnels. We'll talk more about that in our next program.
All right, well, let me just remind you, you're more than welcome to just ask John for a copy of these notes. You just go to hispeoplerejoice@gmail.com, hispeoplerejoice@gmail.com, and he will forward on a copy of the notes to you. They're very comprehensive, all these definitions, and comes with the pictures and everything. So take advantage of it, hispeoplerejoice.com. By the way, when you email John, let us know where you're watching or listening to the Dove as well, so that we can get an idea where you're from, okay? And again, that's hispeoplerejoice@gmail.com.
Or here at the Dove also.
Or here at the Dove. All right, we'll see you next time on Focus.
Hi, I'm Jim and I work at the Dove TV. Every weekday between 6 and 8 a.m., our award-winning news and sports team bring you the best morning show around. It's live, it's honest, and it's a whole lot of fun. And you help make it happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to air local programs that share your voice by making a secure online donation at our website, theDove.us.